Criminal justice reform. Sounds nice enough. Then again, so did health care for everyone. Turns out it was not. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. Everybody will have health care. These things are always packaged in such a nice wrapper. Criminal justice reform meant putting murderers, rapists, carjackers back out on the streets to do exactly that some more. Ken W. Good is a Texas bail attorney and a board member of the Professional Bondsmen of Texas. Been working on bail matters. What does the W stand for?
Wayne, like John Wayne.
Oh, that's
my dad loved John Wayne as
like
the actor.
Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
My grandparents always called me Kenny Wayne.
Where do you live?
I live in Tyler, Texas. I've lived here for about 30 years. I have an office in Tyler and an office in Houston as well. But I met my wife in Tyler, and we have 2 kids, and so I consider that my home.
You're not part of the patent scam, are you?
No.
Are you familiar with that?
No. Absolutely, I am.
There's a
one of my
really
best friends.
good documentary out on that, as part of this kind of extortion economy where they go after these people's patents or claim that you're violating they get a basic patent and then sue you for, sending a fax and go, well, you were using a piece of mechanical instrument to send a message that violates our patent. I like Tyler. My mom's family's from that area. From Tyler, actually.
It's beautiful, beautiful country.
It is beautiful. So, you've been working on the Texas bail reform system, and I think most people, at least anecdotally, can see the result on the back end that it's not working. Where did it go wrong?
I would say it went wrong. It went wrong in several places. Number one, it went wrong in the legislature because there was no willingness to compromise. We have one side, and they started it 2 sessions ago. They did it last session, and they're doing it this session. They want a risk assessment. They're not willing to settle for anything less than a risk assessment. During that 6 years, the science has gone completely against risk assessments. It's gone from in favor of them now to completely against them, and they're still wanting a risk assessment. So I think that's one problem. The other, and I think the second reason why it's gone upside down in Harris County especially, is kind of like what you were saying about patent extortion. They weaponized lawsuits, and they sued Harris County, and they didn't get a judgment against Harris County. They elected new judges who agreed to settle and just gave the plaintiffs whatever they want. And part of the settlement was to change Texas law. So Harris County isn't even following Texas law currently, and everything's going crazy there. And they're like, well, that's what the law requires. No, that's what your settlement where you changed Texas law required, because you gave in and gave everything the plaintiffs wanted. You gave them stuff that they weren't even entitled to under Texas law.
Why do you think that was? Where's the political pressure for this? I mean, is it the felons? Who is this?
Well, for 2 years, we heard we have to settle. We spent $8 million in attorney fees. We spent $8 million. It's outrageous. It's not cost effective. And so they settled. And what did they do? They turned around and spent $100 million to agree to implement the settlement. So I think part of it is politics. You can remember from the last several elections. 6 months before the election, you would see some emotional issues come out to try to get one side of the electorate angry and get them out to vote in larger numbers, which I would argue was needed so that they would have a better chance of winning. And so this is kind of a result of that. You've made an angry mob, and this is what the mob is demanding now, because this is what you told them they wanted.
How bad does it have to get before we do anything about it?
We had a hearing yesterday on House Bill 20, which is the governor's proposed bail reform. And the hearing started at 1 on, all the bills that were pending for that day. They took a recess at 2, came back at 4, and I finished testifying at 3:15 in the morning. And then I drove home because today's my wife's 50th birthday. Happy birthday, Terry. And so I've been up all night. And we still have the same people that are on extremes. We do not have an agreement on compromise. We don't have a willingness to compromise. And so it's going to get worse before it gets better. Now, what I think Harris County is driving part of the need for change, because people for the first time are realizing how bad it is in Harris County. But Harris County won't admit and won't acknowledge that it's as a result of not holding defendants accountable. I mean, they say, well, misdemeanors, they're not the problem. Yes, if you're going to release a misdemeanor person 7, 8, 10 times and not ever hold them accountable for failing to appear, that's part of the problem. I mean, bail does one thing. It guarantees appearance. They're now saying appearance it's not a problem if you don't appear. Well, if you don't appear, then your case doesn't move. If you don't appear, the case gets backlogged. And before the pandemic, Harris County's misdemeanor courts had doubled their pending cases. You can imagine what they are, tripled probably now with the pandemic, because they haven't done anything in a year. But, the criminal justice system has been on suspended animation for a year. It's now close to collapse because they can't handle the backlog, and nobody is requiring people to show up for court.
I grew up in Orange with a guy named David Frege, who owns 25 bail shops around the state.
Knowing well.
Okay. Well, we had a little mini reunion of group of us that all grew up together in Orange at the Galveston Country Club this weekend, and I asked him about the business, and he was talking about how, bail reform has been bad for the business, but bad for society. And he said, I tried to explain to some senators and state reps that I had a case recently. A guy gave me $37,000 for a bail to get back out on the street, and I didn't trust the deal. I thought, this is a bad guy. I'm on the hook, and so I turned it back. And he said, people don't realize we have to you're basically outsourcing the insurance, the security that the guy's going to show back up. And he said, we were adding to the process because we have a financial incentive to make sure he's there. The system worked.
And they're not only outsourcing that, they're outsourcing notification to the defendants. We notify the defendants. We remind them to go to court. We go and get them at some situations and take them to court. So, because we're the guarantor that they will appear. And so the counties have outsourced notification to defendants. We do, and they've been doing it for 200 years for a reason, because we do it well. The Vera Institute was telling the Harris County District Court judges they should agree to reform, but they said any reform would result in a 40% failure to appear rate. But that should be okay. A 40% failure to appear rate shuts down any urban criminal justice system, because you just can't handle every week 40% of your docket doesn't show up. And that's where we are. The people pushing for reform are saying, well, it's not really the risk of them not being stupid and not showing up. It's the risk of them intentionally running off. No, you've just redefined the whole purpose of bail as to be
Ken, hold
not
with me for just a
appearing.
moment. Hold with me. It goes back to what Thomas Sowell says underlies everything we do: incentives. The bondsman has an incentive to get him to court.
The Michael Berry Show.
Kenny Wayne Good is a Texas bail attorney and board member of the Professional Bondsmen of Texas. Ken, why don't you explain real quickly, in a minute or less, how the system works, that someone is charged with a crime and makes a call to one of your clients or peers, and what happens then?
In the majority of counties, when they're arrested, they're taken before a magistrate, and they're individually magistrated, which means the judge considers certain factors and the charge and their risk of not appearing, their ability to pay, and based upon that, sets bail. And then they go into the county jail, and they are waiting release on either a bond by surety or a cash bond, or to request a PR bond. The problem we have is in our urban areas, in our high population areas, because historically Harris County doesn't have the capacity to individually magistrate everybody. Before the lawsuit, they were using bail schedules to divert large numbers of people away from magistration. So when the charge was set, they would have a bond set, and if they could post that, then they would skip magistration and then go to the first hearing. And so we diverted people away from magistration, and they had time to divert their or use their discretion on what was left. Now, with the lawsuit, we're not doing that. We're doing just simple release, which was tried in New York. It was a failure. The problem, Harris County won't admit it's a failure, even though everything shows it's a failure. And so the problem is how it's a capacity. How do you divert people? And what they're trying in Harris County is what they tried in New York. It didn't work there. They agreed and repealed it. They're not doing that in Harris County. And that's the problem, is they won't admit failure.
So what exactly is going wrong? Explain this to people as if we're 6 years old. Where is the problem with the change in the system?
You have large groups of people that never see a magistrate, so they never see a judge. They're arrested, and as long as they're not on a list of certain charges, they are released on a $100 PR bond. I believe that's in violation of Texas law because it requires bail to be set individually based on these factors. They're skipping all that, and they're doing it pursuant to the settlement where they changed Texas law. And so you never see a magistrate, you get a $100 bond. No matter how many times you commit that one crime, as long as it's not on the list, you get another $100 bond. If you fail to appear, Harris County has agreed that you have to miss court 3 times before they can ever do anything to you, and they're still not doing anything. So we got people missing court 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, and they're just getting another bond when they finally come back to the system. That is causing great harm to the system because every time your case is put on hold, it delays justice for the victims, and eventually they just have to decide whether to dismiss the case. And so that's where we're having a breakdown in the system. Large groups of people never see a magistrate.
You write, bail reform has hinged on the use of risk assessment tools to determine which persons are to be released. The suspension of their use has thrown the criminal justice system into chaos. It strikes me that what we're doing now without using these tools is the equivalent of taking every jail and every prison where you got a guy who's in there for a DWI because he blew a little hot driving home 3 blocks from the bar, and you've got a guy that's murdered 7 people, and you're saying, let's treat them both the same and cut both of them loose without going into a case-by-case analysis of who is a greater risk to reoffend, right? That's what we're doing wrong now.
Yes, the risk assessment was meant to be the panacea. It was supposed to be the magic pill that was going to fix the system because it was an algorithm, and you would be able to tell anytime someone's arrested with a push of a button, oh, this guy's a risk, so you need to set a higher bond, or this guy is a big risk, so you have to keep him. The problem is the tools never fulfilled the promises that were made. The largest digital companies came out and say they were rushed to use and never properly tested. They should not be a part of criminal justice reform. The algorithms are really good at predicting what groups will do, but are terrible at predicting what individuals will do. All of the supporters for risk assessment, all the vast numbers of people that originally support them in the last 2 years have abandoned them and no longer support them. And on top of that, the studies since the last legislative session are all the same and say they should not be a part of criminal justice reform. But the problem is the governor's bill for Texas criminal justice reform, the centerpiece of it is a risk assessment.
So they let people be the governor for a day. When I was in high school, Ron Lewis, who was our state rep, it was the Capital Scholars, and he took you up for the weekend for a couple of days, weekdays during the summer, and you got to meet some senators and different people. And Carl Parker, who was our senator, who ended up leaving office in scandal, had been governor for the day. When you went into Carl Parker's office, he had all his governor for a day stuff. So you, Ken W. Good, are governor for a day, but you have king-like powers. You don't have to be politically popular. Tell me in 90 seconds how you solve this problem on a level that a 6th grader could understand it.
First, I would meet with the judges in Harris County, and I could say, you can stop this. You can fix 50% of the problem, and either you fix it or we're going to have massive reform. And what you have to do is hold people. And the way I would do it as king, risk assessments don't work. Simple release doesn't work, so you have to go back to what the Fifth Circuit has told us is the pathway for reform in Texas, and that is a bail schedule. So with procedures to protect the poor, and then that allows us to divert large numbers of people who can afford it, and the people who say they can't, we get to give them an individualized hearing, and we get to make it. We have the time to determine whether they should have a lower bond, and that allows the system to function again.
So, I know you said this, but I want to be very clear. This isn't really a problem in smaller counties, in rural counties. This is really just a primarily Harris County problem, where you've got a whole different level of crime and criminals.
Well, when we say we have, yes, when they say we have a jail overcrowding problem, we're talking about the 12 largest counties in Texas. We're talking about our urban areas. So we don't have jail overcrowding in the vast majority of the state. The vast majority of the state does individual magistration. Everybody sees a judge, and the judge sets bail after seeing them. That's constitutional, complies with the Fifth Circuit. The problems we're having is all capacity, and it's not just Harris County. We have the same issues in Dallas. We have the same issues in Bexar County. They're addressing them differently. They're not doing this mass release, changing Texas law that Harris County has done. And so Harris County is the poster child for reform's not working, and they're the push for why we need reform.
Ken W. Good, why do you have a 713 number if you live in Tyler?
I have a Houston office as well.
Where's that?
It's next to it's on the west side of town. It's next to the Galleria Mall, a couple of blocks from that.
Do you know who Tyler, Texas was named after?
President Tyler?
Do you know what number he was?
Oh, I do not know that.
He was 10th. Do you know what international movement originated in Tyler in 1985?
I'm going to say the Tea Party.
No, but it's a good guess. Adopt a Highway started in Tyler, Texas.
Okay.
Do you have an estimate on the population of the Tyler metropolitan area?
I would say the area that the hospitals service is around 300,000, 400,000.
I think it's 230,000 as of 18, right behind Waco and College Station at number 16. Thanks for being our guest, Ken Good. How'd I get Ken? Oh, Ken W. I had the W in my mind. See, Ken W. Good went to Ken Wood.